The first colony fell in 6 hours. No distress call, no survivors. Only blood and claw marks streaked across steel walls, the silent testament to something far worse than war. The feed from Row 7's security cams stuttered in grainy footage, the final moments of its people playing in grim loops. Shadows moving too fast for the eye, bodies torn apart in flickers of movement, a sickening chorus of wet sounds and inhuman screeches overriding the desperate cries of those trying to run. The transmission cut off abruptly. Commander Day Mercer stood in the war room of Epsilon 2, watching the last frame freeze on the display. A hallway, slick with crimson, a single hand pressed against the lens before vanishing. He exhaled slowly, knuckles whitening against the metal railing. Around him, the War Council murmured, but no one spoke the obvious. The Zynkar had deployed something new, something designed to terrify before it killed. Casualties? Mercer's voice was steady. A young officer, barely out of the academy, swallowed hard. All of them, sir. The entire colony. 12,000 people. Silence spread through the room like a suffocating fog. Dr. Anya Kovalchuk shifted beside him, arms crossed, her face expressionless save for the cold calculation in her eyes. She had seen enough death to grow numb to it. Still, something in her posture was tighter than usual. They didn't just kill, she murmured. They dismantled. Mercer turned to her. Explain. She gestured to the flickering screens, where glimpses of the massacre replayed. Look at the bodies. They weren't devoured. They weren't taken. They were studied. The damage is precise, targeted at joints, arteries, neural clusters. This was dissection. She glanced up at him. The Zynkar's beasts weren't feeding. They were learning. A muscle in Mercer's jaw twitched. The Zynkar were already formidable, ruthless conquerors with bioengineered forces capable of overrunning planets. If their new war beasts were evolving, adapting mid-conflict, the war had just changed. Sir, Sergeant Cole Vance, a soldier built like a wrecking machine, leaned against the table, scanning the reports. This wasn't an extermination. This was a field test. They wanted to see how fast we'd fall. Mercer nodded, understanding sinking in like a weight in his gut. Row 7 wasn't the endgame. It was a warning shot. The next attack would be calculated, surgical. The Zynkar wouldn't just send monsters. They would send extinction. A chime echoed through the chamber. An incoming transmission. A voice, distorted yet unmistakably alien, slithered through the speakers. Your worlds will fall. Your species will serve. Surrender, and we will make it painless. The council exchanged glances. Some looked horrified, others furious. Mercer stepped forward. This is Commander Dane Mercer of the United Human Colonies. I don't negotiate with genocidal filth. A pause, then a low, guttural chuckle. Good. We prefer the hunt. The line went dead. The room was silent for a heartbeat. Then a soldier cursed under his breath. Others shifted uncomfortably. Fear was thick in the air. Mercer exhaled through his nose, then turned to Anya. How long? She blinked, then nodded, understanding the unspoken command. We can have them prepped within the hour. Sergeant Vance's brow furrowed. Sir, his gaze flicked between them. Are we seriously considering? They unleashed their monsters. Mercer cut in. It's time we released ours. A beat of silence. Then, a slow grin spread across Vance's face, dark and approving. About damn time. Anya led them deep beneath Epsilon 2, through reinforced corridors lined with blast-proof walls and biosecure containment zones. As they descended, the air grew heavier, humming with a barely contained energy that wasn't just technological. It was something else, something alive. After the siege of Titan's rest, she began, voice clinical, we realized that conventional weapons weren't enough against the Zynkar. We needed something that could adapt, strategize, and most importantly, strike terror. She keyed in a sequence on a biometric panel, and a massive door groaned open. So we turned to the only creatures that have ever truly mastered war. The lights flickered on. Inside the chamber, enormous enclosures lined the walls, reinforced with energy barriers and thick alloy plating. And within them, predators. Not just beasts, Not just animals. Something worse. Mercer stepped forward, observing the creatures with the keen eye of a commander weighing the fate of a battlefield. One enclosure held something massive, its form blending between feline and reptilian musculature, its eyes calculating in a way that sent a chill down the spine. Another housed a creature that looked like a wolf stripped of all natural limitation, its frame lean, reinforced with sinewy strength, its maw bristling with reinforced fangs. There were others, each one tailored for a specific purpose. Aerial hunters, subterranean stalkers, brute force titans. The Zynkar think they've created the ultimate war machine, Anya said, watching Mercer's expression carefully. They think their war beasts are the pinnacle of terror. Vance let out a low whistle. They don't know what real nightmares look like. Mercer approached the largest containment unit. A single entity lay inside, massive and motionless, its breathing slow but deep, as if dreaming. Unlike the others, it wasn't purely an engineered predator. This one was different. It had history, an evolutionary legacy that stretched back to an Earth that no longer existed in the same way. It wasn't just a creation. It was a survivor. He read the nameplate on the glass. Behemoth. He turned to Anya. And they're ready? She nodded. More than ready. Mercer considered that, then exhaled sharply. Then let's make this clear. He looked at his team, at the war council standing behind them, at the soldiers who had just witnessed the death of an entire colony and were now staring at something that could fight back. The Zynkar think they control the battlefield, he said. They think they control fear. A pause. Let's remind them why humans were never prey. He turned to the control panel. With a single command, the enclosures began to disengage. The predators stirred. The war had begun. The first sign of the attack was silence. No sirens, no warning beacons, just the sudden, unnatural stillness that settled over Epsilon, too like a hell breath. Then the lights flickered. Commander Dane Mercer stood on the war room's upper deck, overlooking the vast expanse of the city's defensive perimeter. The colony was built to withstand full-scale orbital assaults, its walls lined with automated railguns, the streets designed for tactical choke points. And yet, as he scanned the reinforced barriers, his gut told him none of it would matter. Not against what was coming. A crackling transmission cut through the static. Sector 7 has lost contact. We sent recon, never came back. The voice on the other end was tight, with barely contained fear. Sir, something's in the walls. Mercer exchanged a glance with Sergeant Cole Vance, who was already checking his rifle's charge. They're here, Vance muttered, his voice edged with anticipation. A shudder passed through the ground beneath them. Faint at first, then stronger, rhythmic, like something massive was moving below the surface. Mercer grabbed the railing, feeling the vibrations in his bones. Then the screaming started. From the city's lower districts, the Zynkar war beasts erupted from beneath the streets, tearing through steel and concrete as if they were paper. They moved in coordinated swarms, sleek and insectoid, their chitinous hides reflecting the dim emergency lights in streaks of oil-slick black. They were bigger than the ones from Row 7, stronger, smarter, and they weren't alone. The Zynkar themselves arrived moments later, descending from their dropships in tight formations, their crimson armor blending seamlessly with the blood-soaked streets below. These were not mindless invaders. These were conquerors. Mercer activated his comms. Engage the beasts first. Keep the Zynkar pinned until we get reinforcements. He turned to Vance. We hold the line. Vance grinned, checking his knife. Wouldn't have it any other way. The battle erupted in a cacophony of gunfire and inhuman screeches. Soldiers held their positions on the rooftops, raining plasma rounds into the swarm. But for every creature that fell, 2 more took its place. They climbed over each other in a frenzy, snapping through armor and bone, their razor-edged limbs carving a brutal path toward the colony's central command. Mercer's sidearm burned hot in his grip as he fired into the oncoming horde. His shots found their marks, heads exploded, limbs severed, but it wasn't enough. The Zynkar had sent an army designed to overrun, to overwhelm, which meant it was time. He activated his second comm channel. Dr. Kovalchuk, Unleash them. In the underground containment zones, heavy blast doors groaned as they slid open. The first thing to emerge was not a creature but a sound, a deep, primal rumble that vibrated through the facility like distant thunder. Then they came. From the tunnels beneath Epsilon, 2, humanity's own nightmares were released. A streak of motion, too fast for the eye to follow, darted across the battlefield. A hell raven, its blackened feathers blending with the smoke, talons cutting through Zynkar flesh before it vanished into the sky. A pack of enhanced dire wolves tore through the war beasts like ghosts through mist, their claws reinforced with carbon weave plating, their intelligence terrifyingly human. They didn't just kill. They hunted. They outmaneuvered. They enjoyed it. And then there was Behemoth. The ground shook as it emerged, its massive frame dwarfing even the Zynkar's largest creatures. It wasn't a mindless brute. It was an apex predator, honed by human hands, its eyes locked onto the largest of the Zynkar's war beasts with a terrifying understanding. The two titans collided. A shockwave rippled outward as Behemoth slammed into the enemy's Behemoth, the force sending debris flying in all directions. Claws met claws, teeth sank into armor, muscle strained against muscle. It was more than a fight. It was dominance, a battle between the universe's most perfected killers. The Zynkar had expected humanity to break. Instead, they had met something worse. Mercer stood amidst the chaos, watching as the battlefield shifted. For the first time, the Zynkar hesitated. Their beasts, conditioned to slaughter without resistance, faltered. Some even turned, as if sensing the sudden reversal in the food chain. The hunters had become the hunted. Vance drove his knife into the skull of a Zynkar soldier, kicking the body aside. "Sir," he called over the comms, wiping blood from his cheek. "I think we got their attention." Mercer exhaled, watching the tide turn. And then, the air changed. The battlefield fell into an unnatural stillness. The war beasts stopped mid-lunge. The hell ravens, mid-flight, shrieked and scattered. Even Behemoth tensed, hackles rising. A new sound filled the air. Low, resonant, like a heartbeat in the sky. Mercer turned, eyes narrowing as a new shape descended from the Zynkar flagship, its form different from the others. It was massive, but not monstrous. Elegant in its brutality. Where the other war beasts were engineered for brute force, this one had intelligence. Its gaze met Behemoth's with something eerily close to recognition. It didn't just move. It calculated. Dr. Kovalchuk's voice came through the comms, tight with something Mercer didn't like. "Commander," she said, "they've just introduced something new." The creature let out a sound that sent a shiver through even the fiercest of humanity's beasts. A sound that commanded. And Mercer realized, the Zynkar weren't just evolving their war beasts. They had made a king. The battle was far from over. The thing that descended from the Zynkar flagship was unlike anything Mercer had ever seen. It was massive, its armored form plated in chitin that shimmered like polished obsidian. But what set it apart from the rest wasn't its size. It was the way it moved, deliberate, precise, measured. Not a mindless beast, not a berserker. This was something far worse. It was thinking. The battlefield seemed to hold its breath. Even the Zynkar war beasts, rabid and relentless only moments ago, stilled at its presence. The air changed, thickening with something primal, something that sent a shudder through every human soldier standing their ground. A predator had arrived, not just to fight, but to rule. Behemoth reacted first. The monstrous titan, humanity's greatest war beast, let out a deep, rolling snarl that reverberated through the ruined streets. It lowered its massive head, muscles bunching beneath its plated hide, claws flexing against the shattered concrete. Its challenge was clear. The Zynkar's king answered. It lunged, a blur despite its size, closing the distance in a heartbeat. Behemoth braced for impact, but the enemy was fast, too fast. It twisted mid-air, its motion a cruel mockery of fluid grace. And then it struck. A sickening crack echoed across the battlefield as the thing's reinforced claws raked across Behemoth's side. Not a wild attack, a calculated wound. Asterisk, asterisk, blood splattered against the rubble. Behemoth roared, more in frustration than pain, and retaliated with a savage swipe that should have decimated the enemy. But it missed. Mercer's stomach twisted. The Zynkar's creation had studied them. It wasn't fighting like an animal. It was analyzing, adapting, dissecting. Vance fired a round at the beast's flank, the plasma shot burning a glowing streak across its chitin, but it barely reacted. "We need to hit it harder," he growled. "No." Anya's voice cut in sharply over the comms. "We need to stop fighting like them." Mercer turned to her. "Explain." She was already moving, dragging a tablet from her belt, her fingers flying over data streams pulled from their war beast's neural feeds. "It's anticipating brute force, because that's what we've been using. It's countering Behemoth's instincts, turning every attack into a lesson." She looked up, eyes sharp. "We have to make it unpredictable." Mercer didn't hesitate. He keyed into the control system for their creatures, linking directly to the handlers overseeing them. "Override standard attack patterns. Tell them to improvise." The war beast shifted. The dire wolves, who had been attacking in formation, suddenly scattered into erratic, randomized movements. The hell ravens, instead of diving in synchronized strikes, began looping in chaotic, twisting flight paths, forcing the enemy to chase rather than predict. And Behemoth stopped reacting instinctively. It watched. For the first time in the battle, Mercer saw hesitation in the Zynkar King. Uncertainty. It twisted its head, recalculating, recalibrating. And Behemoth attacked. Not head-on, not with brute force, but with something human. It feinted, the sudden shift in movement threw the Zynkar's beast off balance just enough, just for one critical opening. Behemoth's claws lashed out, striking deep into its opponent's side, not a wild blow, but a precise, deliberate one. The king staggered. Vance hooped, but Mercer wasn't celebrating yet. He could feel the shift in the air, the way the Zynkar beast trembled. Then screamed. The sound was unbearable. Not just a cry of pain, but something else. A pulse of energy rippled outward, distorting the air like a gravitational shockwave. The war beasts reeled, the human forces stumbling as their visors flickered with interference. And the Zynkar reacted. Until now, their soldiers had been watching, holding back, as if waiting for something. But now, as their king bled, as the battle turned against them, they charged, not with discipline, not with tactical precision, but with desperation. The battlefield erupted again, chaos reigniting in full force. The Zynkar warriors, once so assured of their superiority, were now fighting to survive. Mercer gritted his teeth. This was their chance. "Hit them hard," he barked. "Break them while they're scared." The war beasts surged forward, their movements still unpredictable, still impossible for the enemy to track. The dire wolves ripped through the lines. The hell ravens blinded them from above, and Behemoth was winning. The Zynkar King had strength. It had speed, but it had never been forced to think like a human. And that was its downfall. It tried to anticipate, tried to counter, but it couldn't, because humans didn't fight fair. Mercer watched as Behemoth struck again and again, each attack building upon the last, each move forcing the Zynkar's beast into a smaller and smaller corner. And then, in a final, perfectly timed strike, Behemoth tore out its throat. The Zynkar King collapsed. For a moment, everything was still. Then across the battlefield, the Zynkar forces broke. Mercer saw it in real time. The way their soldiers hesitated, the way their war beasts withered without the thing that had commanded them. The iron will that had bound them together fractured. And then, asterisk, asterisk, they ran. Asterisk, asterisk. The great Zynkar army, the force that had swept through human colonies like a plague, the invincible monsters they had unleashed. They ran. Vance let out a ragged breath, stepping back. "That's it," he muttered. "They're done." Anya didn't look relieved. Neither did Mercer, because the Zynkar didn't retreat. They didn't run, unless they had something worse waiting. Mercer keyed into his comms. eyes scanning the battlefield, the retreating forces, the looming flagship above. "Stay sharp," he murmured. "This isn't over yet." The silence that followed the retreat was unnatural. Not the quiet of peace, but the stillness of something unfinished. Mercer stood amidst the ruin, boots crunching over shattered Zynkar armor, his pulse still hammering in his ears. The air was thick with the metallic scent of blood, both human and alien. Behemoth loomed over the battlefield, its massive form heaving with exertion, its dark eyes scanning for threats that refused to come. And yet, Mercer couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. Vance turned, wiping a streak of gore from his cheek. "We won." He exhaled, as if testing the words, as if they didn't quite fit. "They're gone." Hell, they ran. Anya stood beside him, eyes locked on the Zynkar flagship. She wasn't celebrating. Mercer followed her gaze. The massive vessel hung in the sky like a dying god, its sleek form darkened by smoke and damage, its weapons cold. And yet, it hadn't fled with the others. It simply lingered, waiting. Mercer activated his comms. "Kovalchuk, talk to me." The scientist's voice came through, strained but steady. "Their forces are pulling back, but a pause. A hesitation. Sir, I think they wanted us to kill their king." A sick weight settled in Mercer's stomach. "Explain." "I've been running scans," Kovalchuk continued. "That thing wasn't just their war beast. It was a failsafe. A command node. The Zynkar don't function like us. They build biological hierarchies. When we killed it, we didn't just break their control. We triggered something else." Mercer's hands clenched. "What?" The answer came not from Kovalchuk, but from the sky. The Zynkar flagship began to open. Not like a ship deploying troops. Not like a vessel initiating an attack. Like a cocoon splitting open. A deep, resonant hum filled the air, vibrating through Mercer's chest like a distant earthquake. The structure of the flagship warped, twisted, shifted, as if the metal itself was something alive, something awakening. Then it fell. Not in destruction, not in failure. It descended, slowly, deliberately, crashing into the dead center of the battlefield. The ground buckled, buildings crumbling in the shockwave, but it didn't explode. It didn't burn. It changed. The metal pulsed, shifted, spread. Like veins stretching outward, it seeped into the earth, into the ruined city, merging, expanding. A grotesque metamorphosis. A voice crackled over Mercer's comms, barely audible through the interference. "Kovalchuk again." "Oh, God." Mercer didn't hesitate. Asterisk, asterisk, what? Is it? Asterisk, asterisk. "I was wrong," she whispered. The king wasn't the final weapon. The ship was. Something moved. Where the flagship had fallen, it rose. A towering, grotesque shape. Not machine, not beast, but something in between. Not a king. A god. Mercer barely had time to process before it screamed. The sound was not like the king's final cry. That had been desperate. Mortal. This was announcement. The Zynkar hadn't lost. They had evolved. And now, so had their war. Behemoth, humanity's apex predator, stepped back. A rumbling growl escaped its throat. Not in challenge, but in something close to fear. Vance exhaled sharply. "We don't have a plan for this." Anya's voice was tight. "We don't need a plan. We need a miracle." Mercer's mind raced, every strategy, every countermeasure useless in the face of what was happening. They had spent years creating monsters to fight monsters, perfecting horrors to counter horrors. But this was something else. The thing that had once been a ship moved. It was vast, its form impossible to define, shifting between metallic and organic, limbs forming and dissolving as it advanced. And then, something worse. The Zynkar forces, those that had fled, asterisk, asterisk, stopped running. Asterisk, asterisk. Not in fear. In worship. They turned, their broken ranks reforming, their hesitation gone. The sight of their new god had restored them. Mercer clenched his jaw. The battle hadn't just restarted. It had reset, but humans didn't fight fair. "Fall back," he ordered, stepping beside Behemoth. The war beast glanced at him, breathing hard, but still listening. "Kovalchuk, I need options." The scientist's voice crackled. "We have one." "Then tell me." She hesitated. We never should have made Behemoth. We knew that. The genetic warping, the enhancement drives, it was too much even for us. A sharp breath. We built an override, a last resort. Mercer's blood went cold. You mean a kill switch? Silence. Then, more than that. We can push it past its limits. Remove the restrictions. Let fully evolve. Anya inhaled sharply. That would kill it. Not right away, Kovalchuk admitted. But soon enough. Behemoth, their greatest creation, their only hope. Asterisk, asterisk, a ticking time bomb. Asterisk, asterisk. Mercer stared at the battlefield, at the impossible thing rising before them, at his people, and he made a choice. Do it. The command was absolute, irrevocable. Kovalchuk's voice shook. Activating now. Behemoth shuddered. Then it changed. Its form expanded, muscle and plating surging outward in a grotesque acceleration of its own evolution. Its eyes darkened, intelligence deepening into something beyond human understanding. And then it attacked. Not as a beast, not as a war machine, but as something more. The clash was beyond anything Mercer had seen. Behemoth met the god thing head-on, not as prey, not as challenger. Asterisk, asterisk, but as equal. Asterisk, asterisk, the battlefield quaked, the sky split, and for the first time, the Zynkar's new weapon faltered. Because Behemoth wasn't just a creation of war. It was a creation of humanity, a species that refused to lose. The two titans tore into each other, their battle so vast it defied understanding. The Zynkar forces stood frozen, their faith in their new god now uncertain. And that was all humanity needed. Push forward. Mercer roared. Asterisk, asterisk, end this. Asterisk, asterisk. The soldiers of Epsilon, two charged. The Hell Ravens dived. The dire wolves hunted. And Behemoth won. Not with brute strength, not with instinct, but with strategy, with humanity. The final blow was swift, efficient. The god thing collapsed, its corrupted metal cracking, crumbling, failing. The Zynkar, their belief shattered, broke. This time, when they fled, they didn't stop. Silence. True silence. Mercer stood amidst the wreckage, watching Behemoth. The great beast swayed, its body failing, its mind still aware. Slowly, deliberately, it turned its head to look at Mercer. And then, with a final, shuddering breath, it fell. Mercer didn't speak. He simply raised a hand and saluted.